There's so much bad information, especially in this chronic pain and flexibility space where and I know these people are just trying to help as well, but they're getting their information from the wrong sources and they're not, and a lot of it's just not helpful at
Mhm.
all.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our Valor Vision podcast here. I'm Nick, and I am bringing on a special guest that I'm really excited to talk to. Dan here is going to be absolutely something that I think a lot of us are going to get a lot of benefit out of when we really dive into not only his story, but also some of the learning that he has done. Let's dive right into it. Dan Esposito, welcome on to the podcast. Let me read a bio off for you before you just take this show by storm, man. I'm
Sure,
looking
sure.
forward to it. We've had such a good time chatting before, but Dan spent much of his life as a high level athlete, pushing his body to the limits with a major health crisis that changed everything for him. And we'll get into all of that. Faced with chronic pain and uncertain future, he refused to accept defeat and committed himself to fighting for his health and his family. This journey became a defining part of his story, shaping his resilience, renewing his hope, and reframing how he understood purpose beyond performance or pain. What began as a personal pursuit turned into a calling. That calling led him to create the Undo Method, a holistic approach designed to serve people living with chronic pain and restore hope where it's often been lost. Today, Daniel is also a two-time USA track and field masters national champion, an All-American, and a world-ranked sprinter. Proof that his story doesn't have to end where the doctors or circumstances say it will. Daniel's mission is simple and powerful: to help others lead, heal, reclaim their life, and rediscover hope physically, mentally, and spiritually. And on top of it, my man is also, he played for the NFL with both the Redskins and the Saints. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And so, of course, we watched the game last night and all that kind of good stuff too. But Dan, welcome on. How we doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my message with, my whole family is filled with military people who served in the military. So I know that, dabbling in this world and talking to some other military guys who are suffering from chronic pain, it's definitely a group of guys that I want to help educate so they can get past this, either mental health challenges or chronic pain and flexibility challenges. They
So
kind of
tell
go
us your
together.
story though. How did we dive into all of that? Like what,
Yeah,
you started in the NFL and things like that. And even tell us, how did you even get into that? Was that straight out of college or?
sure. Yeah. So just kind of going back in my early life, I think we'll start there. My mother was married 3 times. A couple of those guys were, rough. They were tough men to live with. And I ended up in 5 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 3 high schools. So my entire sort of educational existence, once, the tough days started happening, was really more focused on making friends. And the way I would make friends was through my athletic ability. I'd show up at a
Mhm.
school, I'd automatically be one of the most athletic guys there. And, you make fast friends that way. But I didn't start playing football till I was a senior in high school. I had moved from Florida back to Philadelphia to live with my father and went out for the football team there. Our head coach told my dad I was not a running back. They put me at fullback. He said I didn't have this. So 4 NFL contracts later, I proved him wrong. But, just playing 1 year, not getting the ball much at fullback, a handful of times a game if I was lucky. I had 2 very small schools come look at me. Both of them one of them was in much colder weather and the other one was a little Division 3 school. And I knew that I could play Division 1, but I at least deserved, a shot at Division 2. So I walked on to a small school here in Pennsylvania. I wasn't very good to start. I was very athletic. I could do some things, but I didn't understand football yet. It was just still foreign to me. But, I've always had this idea that if someone can do it, I can do it. We're
Mm.
no different. It just takes a little time to learn it. So by my junior year, I was definitely the best running back in the running back room. I was told before the first game of my junior year that I was the starter. And then the day of the game, I somehow went from being the starter to being the third string running back. without having any practices in between. And it was because my head coach favored the scholarship guys ahead of me. I was a walk on. And it's a little bit understandable, but I was so much better than, just statistically, I mean, and some of the guys were a little younger than me and some, whatever, some of the guy was limited in his abilities, but I was a really good all around running back. So, I would touch the ball maybe once a game that season. If I was lucky, I'd rattle off a 60-yard touchdown and never see the ball again. Then my senior year came, third game of my senior season, I finally got a chance to start. I was the offensive player of the nation for Division II, had like 300 and something yards, all purpose yards. And then that's when the scouts started coming. I retained the starting job for the rest of the year. And then by the end of the year, scouts or the agents are calling me. I finally signed with an agent. And then it came down to the Redskins and Dolphins. Unfortunately, my agent gave him his office line, so the Dolphins couldn't get a hold of him on his cell phone to try to sign me, which I would have much rather being a Florida boy. Been in Florida, been in the nice Miami heat, but Redskins invited me to camp without a contract. I earned a contract after the 3-day rookie mini camp. Came into camp, got cut very quickly because they signed Terry Allen. He was the first running back to come back from 2 knee replacements or 2 ACL tears. Then they re-signed me back the first week of the preseason up in a camp we had in Frostburg State up in Maryland. First game, broke my jaw in 2 places. My first play in the NFL. So I'm running down on kickoff. First guy down there, I'm geeked. We're in Kansas City. And number 77, which is obviously an offensive lineman's number at the time, just his helmet got me right underneath my helmet. All the teeth here pointed that way. This tooth here clicked that way. Didn't fall over, stayed in the play. Didn't tell my coaches till the end of the game, played the whole game with a broken jaw in 2 places. So pain in me, I can handle pain, but what happened to me much later on with the chronic pain was unbearable. It was a place that was dark emotionally, physically, spiritually. And, it all happened. We'll just fast forward into when this stuff all started happening. It all happened in my late 30s. And it really comes down to my diet. I wasn't treating myself well. I had just started a new business, which was a commercial energy brokerage, and I was eating pizza all the time. And I was thinking, hey, I'm a world-class athlete. I can eat whatever I want. My body's just better than everyone's. I'm going to be able to handle it. The body handles these things. And I had no idea how the body really, truly worked, right? And so
I think you're invincible back then,
You really do. You've come back from a couple things early in life and you're like, I need a few months and I'll be right back to where I was. But what had happened was I basically was putting my body in such a state of inflammation. And unknowingly prior to this, I was creating an environment in my body that made it more susceptible to inflammation. So you've got the cellular level, which is where the inflammation starts, and the cells have to be compromised of a good ratio of fats. When they're not, they act wild. Right. So this thing that would cause inflammation at the cellular level that should just give off a little inflammation response is now this insane, crazy inflammation response. And the reason for that is your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, right? Your omega-3s, fish oil, nuts. Omega-6s is what we're finding in all of our manufactured foods. Seed oils, right? We're cooking in seed oils. We go out to eat. It's in seed oils. All the French fries are dipped in seed oils. Very high in omega-6s. And even the chicken that we buy in the store, because it's fed grain and corn, does not matter if it's organic or not, still is high in omega-6s, really high in omega-6. So now when you have an imbalance, and the ratio should be no worse than 4 omega-3 6s to omega-1s, 4 to 1, or omega-3s, I'm sorry, omega-6, omega-3. It should be 4 to 1. The average American is 15 to 1. So these cells become a huge proponent of this inflammation response. So just looking at the cellular level, that's where I first started looking at everything is how do I make healthy cells? And then so I'd gotten these diagnoses and I was stiff, literally if I was to turn my neck it would have been like this, right? Trying to like reach out the window to pay for a ticket in the, when you're parking or whatever, I would have to get out of the car because nothing in my body was moving. Every single piece of my body was stiff and in chronic pain. And so when I first started trying to heal it, I looked at Netflix, which is one of the worst things you can do is go to Netflix for your health advice. And there were these sort of like documentaries on juicing fruits and vegetables. And I had heard about superfoods. And I think a lot of us kind of go down the wrong path here. Juicing spinach and, vegetables and things like that isn't as healthy as it's proposed to be or promoted to be. So in certain foods, especially spinach and beets and Swiss chard, these plants have a defense chemical. And this defense chemical, if it's not in your soft tissue throughout your body, it ends up in your kidney and it's a kidney stone. When you juice spinach, you drink it, it leaks out through your gut, these little nanoparticles called oxalic acid, which becomes an oxalate, which is a kidney stone. So it leaks out and starts building crystal formations all throughout your soft tissue, in your teeth. They can get into your eyes. A lot of women get them in their reproductive areas and have to get hysterectomies because of them. And
Wow.
so I had gotten lucky, listened to a podcast on oxalates, not even knowing that was in my body. I had been doing acupuncture and I would come across them and I knew I was juicing. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what's in here. Did this oxalate cleanse and then the oxalates would come out through my skin, but my muscles would start loosening up a little bit and they would start twitching, meaning that I'm getting more life, oxygen, electricity back into the muscle. So that really helped. And then I just really started going down these paths of what is pain, right? And I think everybody has a misconception about what pain is, especially when you're in chronic pain, because it gets labeled as a central nervous system processing disorder. You just think that, oh, there's something genetically wrong with me. Something's wrong with my nervous system. But the reality of it is in your central nervous system, you have these nociceptors. They're pain receptors. So when you get really hardened tissue, glycation, inflammation, poor collagen growth, oxidative stress, they're constantly activating these pain receptors, right? And then sending a valid signal to your brain, right? They're not misfiring. So the goal is how do we break down all the crap, all the soft tissue? And so then that became my focus. And what I learned is that most of these things are proteins that are held together by chemical bonds. So just like WD-40, the way you break a chemical bond of rust is you add an electron to it. It splits the bond and then the body can start breaking it down. So that's the theory behind how I started looking at all of this. From that point on was not the cell level. Let's look at what actually physically is impairing or activating these pain receptors.
Right.
So, and the main thing is inflammation. And so once again, when we look at inflammation, everybody has this misconception of what inflammation is. And inflammation is a healing cycle that has a beginning, like we talked at the cellular level, where it gives off that initial response, creates a glue. The glue becomes a fibrin. It's a clot. Collagen weaves its way in there. So now the clot, the fibrin is called scar tissue or an insoluble protein. The collagen is considered the same. Well, when you build your collagen, you got to build it correctly or it becomes this just glue, basically. Then you give off lymph because the white blood cells are repairing the area that you'll see the swelling. And then the white blood cells retreat. And then the cycle is almost complete. But here's where nobody gets to. And this is the most important part of the cycle is cleaning up the mess. So the way that God created our body to clean up the mess is through fasting, right? In the Bible, it says you will fast, not I hope you fast, or it's going to be nice if you fast. It's when you fast, right? So at 20 hours of fasting, you have these enzymes in your liver that are either digesting food or looking for these misfolded proteins, these fibrins and things like that. At 20 hours, they're alerted that you're not feeding itself anymore. They start scouring the body, looking for these scar tissue, basically, adding an electron, breaking it open, and then your body has these other sets of tools that now break it down slowly and things start opening it up for you. So yeah, it's a really interesting experience, by the way, to go from being tight back to loose is like something that hardly anybody experiences. So yeah, it's a really interesting just process of healing that happens that not many people have experienced yet.
No, so what was the list of diagnoses that doctors came in? It was like, yo, you got all this stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like you're jacked. No more fun stuff for you.
Yeah. So the first thing was restless leg syndrome, right? Then they
Wow.
wanted to do sleep studies on me. I was beaten on my leg. I would hit my legs. I'm trying to it was hardening up in there, right? But I don't know
Like,
what's
wake up,
going on.
guy. Come
Like
on.
I have no idea what's going on underneath my
Right.
skin, right? We're just ignorant to all that. So then they want to do a sleep study on me. They sent me home with an opioid, which I took one of them. And I was like, I am not even going back to these people. They have no idea what they're talking about. Like, you don't just develop restless leg syndrome in this neurological way. Something that's in your body is creating a mess. And they're
Mhm.
just trying to mask the symptom with that drug. And I was like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Then frozen shoulder, right? Because my shoulders were just locked down, both of them. Then, I mean, I had 5 shoulder surgeries. I've had 13 surgeries overall. Only one of them I think was necessary, and that was my torn ACL. It was an actual injury.
Mhm.
And then, after I get all these surgeries, I'm pushing into like my 40s now. And the doctors are like, yeah, you have degenerative arthritis. My chiropractor had diagnosed me with fibromyalgia and said I was the stiffest person they've ever worked on in their entire life. And then my doctor who did my last shoulder surgeries, like, said I needed to get either my right or my left shoulder started on when I turned 50. And then I'm going to need to get the rest of my joints, my other shoulder and my 2 knees done after that. And so after the surgery, I said to the doctor, I said, what's going on under there? Like, what's happening? You know what I mean? Like, and he told me my muscles were tangled, right? And so that's not real. Like, your muscles don't get tangled. But what happens is every single muscle fiber in your body, and you have trillions of them, is wrapped in collagen, right? It's called an
Okay.
endomysium. And so if you're not building that collagen correctly, it gets stuck against the next muscle fiber's collagen. And then it gets stuck again. And then so now think of a paintbrush that hardens. That's what your muscles become like, rather than just a soft, flexible paintbrush where you can twist and turn and move and, do all these things. And so, you want to break down the paint on a paintbrush, you stick it in water, maybe throw some sort of chemical agent against it. It breaks it down. Same thing with like super glue. So I applied those same theories to the undo method. Like, what are these main causes of pain? How are they held together? How do you break them down? But yeah, so those were the diagnoses. And then, along with all those diagnoses, my mental health failed miserably.
Oh, yeah.
Anxiety was because you're constantly in fight or flight. That fight or
Mhm.
flight gives off a molecule called histamine, right? Histamine, if you think of what is anxiety, it's mainly histamine or that initial inflammation response. And so when you have a diet, which our American diet is rich in folic acid rather than folate, the natural version, histamine has more of an opportunity to just kind of run rampant to keep you in like a constant state of fight or flight because your body's not able to modulate it correctly. And then that histamine molecule is related to this other molecule, and I might get too technical here, but they're two just important words to understand. Homocysteine. And if you go look at all the studies, homocysteine is closely related to depression. So now I just get in this cycle of chronic pain, feel a little better, get anxiety, get depression, don't move around for a while, then go push myself. All the pain happens again, chronic pain, and it just becomes this cycle that never ends until you break down physically those things that are causing these reactions within the body.
Yeah, because normally you hear of histamines as in like having allergies, like antihistamine,
Yeah.
medicine, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's
It's
just going to get my runny nose and everything else to feel better in the middle of the fall or spring and all of that when everyone's just like dying of allergies.
Yeah, histamine is good. I mean, it's very crucial. It opens up your blood vessels, right? Allows for more blood flow. But just like anything, even water, you can overdo water. Too much
Mhm.
histamine unregulated becomes, you're in fight or flight. And it's unmanageable because when you're in fight or flight, and this is so when you take a look at, let's talk at guys who were in the military, right? You have this experience that kind of pushes, you have this trauma in your life, right? And at some point, you're activating this trauma with your histamine response, your fight or flight response, right? So when you have histamine, it's like it brings that trauma closer to where your brain is going to recognize it because you're in danger. And when you're in danger, when you're in fight or flight, that signal must be reacted to, not responded to. It is a reaction, right? You can't control it or you're going to get eaten by the tiger, right? And so I would take certain supplements that would cause a histamine response early on that I didn't know this was happening. And then I would be very angry with my kids, but they'd be doing the same thing the next day or the day before. And I would just think it was fun and funny. So it was this complete mismanagement of my emotional output because I'm in this fight or flight process all the time.
Mhm. Man, I mean, so, like, you've got a lot of medical knowledge now, having done all of this. Like, what is this wasn't like you just watched a YouTube video and you're good to go. Like, this was, like, a long enduring time of, like, actually studying all this.
Yeah, and I think I was led down this path. I mean, I feel
Mhm.
like all the questions that I asked were the right questions, right? And everything's based in science. Everything's backed in third-party published medical studies you can find on the National Institute of Health website. But just kind of going back to my path and my spirituality and my relationship with God and Jesus, I think that early on, God gave me two reasons to doubt him. And it was in the Bible. It was do not eat swine, for it's unclean.
Mhm.
Don't mix linen and wool. Right. And so I thought, how arbitrary. I'm a young kid, 10, 12 years old when I start having these realizations.
Yeah, because people are like, "Dude, bacon is good to go. What are you talking about?"
Yeah. What do you bacon's the best thing in the world. And linen and wool, I mean, that just sounds so silly, right? But until you start reading the science about it and learning the science about it. So, we have these reactions that happen in our body that contribute to chronic pain. So when you eat swine, pork, bacon, whatever, it causes a process in the body called glycation. And glycation leaves behind an advanced glycation end product, right? It's a sticky film that binds your muscles together, causes oxidative stress, which is one of the things that cause pain, as well as the glycation, and causes inflammation. And then it just becomes a cycle of where it never ends until you've repaired the body. So your body can handle 15,000 of these advanced glycation end products on a daily basis, right? Eating 3 strips of bacon is 90,000 advanced glycation end products. So say you're on a keto diet and you're eating pack of bacon a week, you've basically created a cement mixer in your mouth, and then you're cementing up your soft tissue and then causing not only that to cause pain, but other reactions in the body that are going to cause anxiety and pain.
And this is
Then
pretty solely to swine, right? Or any pig-like animal.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely swine. Swine is the number one. Bacon is number one at the top of the list. I have a
Mhm.
list in my program of all the glycation, the highest glycation foods, but two hamburgers or two hot dogs at the ballpark are going to get you to about, 12,000. Right. So, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm not giving up bacon. It's like, all right, well, if you don't give up bacon, even though God said you should, you know that you can only have one slice of bacon a day and none of the other glycating foods, or you have to know how to manage it. So
Mhm.
polyflavonoids, like the one I have in flexibility fuel called rutin, breaks the chemical bond of glycation, right? Quercetin, which a lot of people have heard of. Quercetin is another polyflavonoid. Same thing. It can break the chemical bond of glycation and help your body break that down. So linen and wool, everything in life has frequency. Your body resonates at about 65 to 100 megahertz, right? When you have something touching your body that's a lower frequency, it's going to steal electrons from you, creating an unpaired electron in the body. So this shirt, I'm wearing this because it's my USA. I wore this at the World Championships. It's my, I figured it would be good for your guys. But this shirt is 15 hertz, or this sweatshirt, and this shirt is 15 hertz. It's lower frequency than my body. So what's happening is I'm actually becoming unhealthy every second that I wear these shirts. It's stealing electrons from me and also causing glycation internally all day, every day as I'm wearing these. And we're laying in these kinds of beds. Well, linen is 5,000 hertz. Wool is 5,000 plus hertz. So the reality is they're donating electrons back to you, stabilizing that free radical so it stops causing damage. When you put those two fabrics together, it becomes a zero energy field. And then now it's stealing electrons back from you, causing disease within the body. So these two things that I thought were so arbitrary that pushed me away from my spirituality turned out to be some of the most important things in this whole journey that I had to be aware of.
Mhm.
A doctor, I remember when I was in maybe second or third grade, asked me if I breathe through my nose or through my mouth. And once again, I thought, why does he care about that? I've held on to that thought, that question for my whole life. And it turns out when you breathe through your nose, your body creates nitric oxide as long as there's L-arginine in your body, and it keeps clots from forming, right? So if you're not breathing through your nose continuously daily, and we're eating a standard American diet, which is highly inflammatory, more of those chemical bonds of that scar tissue, that fibrin is going to set in. So intentionally, I need to breathe through my nose. I wear the nasal strips. I do all that stuff to make sure that I'm breathing deeply through my nose to create a healthier environment in the
You
body.
know, in the military, we always like kind of like made fun of people that like continues
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
walk. He's a freaking mouth breather,
Right.
and like, and we said stuff like that, but it's funny that there's science to back that. Close your mouth, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, one, the Bible tells you to watch what you say and close your mouth a lot more than you speak, but there's some benefit to literally closing your mouth and breathe through your nose.
Yeah. And it's a problem because my nose, for whatever reason, is constantly stuffed up and I can't
Mhm.
figure it out. It's one of the things I'll get to eventually. But, unfortunately, I'm using nasal spray way more than I want to. But if I don't, I'm a mouth breather. I don't want to be that guy.
No, yeah, I do the nasal rinses, like the neti pot or whatever, like add some, salt into the water and make it saline and rinse through, and that's really kinda helped me out, with
Yeah.
being able to breathe a lot better, and yeah, 'cause I I don't know, I naturally want to breathe through my
Yeah.
nose, but
So I don't know if you watch TikTok or whatever, but
Mhm.
intake has that little strip you put over with two magnets here
Yeah,
and it pulls you apart. You get that. I'm
yeah.
telling you, it's like you're a whole different person. You've taken 20 years of your age away in the way you're breathing. It's incredible how much better you can breathe with that thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So like you've gone through all of this where you're starting to put things together, right? This is
Yeah.
where because you're in pain while doing all of this research. Like
Yes.
you're dealing with the fibromyalgia, you're dealing with all of that pain as you're going through it. So this is literally daily motivation to figuring this out, right?
Every single day, something new would come apart. And at the beginning, I thought, "Oh, things are coming apart. This is going to take me like 2, 3 months." It's been years of having to focus in on this. And I was mentioned to you before, like, after football, and you kind of lose identity when you don't have, movement. And then you're a father and a partner and you want to be useful to your family and you're no longer useful. And just your identity as a man starts crumbling because you just can't perform for your family. And so it became, I mean, obviously, it was the most important thing I've ever done because I not only did it for my family, for myself, but I feel like I'm going to help a lot of other people. But it gave me purpose and it gave me a direction somewhere I could head. Thank God I was led by God because without having that guidance, I don't know what I would have come up with. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so much bad information, especially in this chronic pain and flexibility space where and I know these people are just trying to help as well, but they're getting their information from the wrong sources and they're not, and a lot of it's just not helpful at
Mhm.
all. The competitor in me wants to be like, you're doing this wrong. But then, as you've grow and want to be more helpful, you become more collaborative with people. And I think that, I don't have the complete solution. I think I have a much bigger piece than everybody else does, but I know that there's going to be somebody that can help me add to this. And that's,
Mhm.
why I think it's important to have a community of people, especially guys who are in the military they dig into things, to have other guys who are like, okay, I tried these things. I've tried these things. I've also tried this thing and it's worked. And let's look into the science behind that.
Mhm.
I think it will give a lot of guys who might be dealing with chronic pain in your community just a new sense of a goal, a new purpose, but knowing that it's possible is, I think, the most important thing.
No, absolutely. One of the, I think, questions that a lot of people would probably bring up because it's always a topic that's thrown around whenever new medical science comes out is how does genetics play into this? Like, where does, my genetic makeup, I'm Italian and all this kind of stuff.
I
And
got one
so
for you. Yeah.
I want, like, there's a part of like, don't talk about pork, man, because like I need my salami. and prosciutto and all of that kind of different stuff, right? And so where does
Yeah.
genetics come into all this?
It's interesting. It's Italian. So uh, in your DNA, your DNA controls this thing called the methylation cycle. So your methylation cycle is when you put something in your mouth, your body adds a carbon to it, blah, blah, blah. It makes it usable to the body. So
Mhm.
the MTHFR genes, you get them from your parents, right? And so if you're 100% Italian, you have a much greater chance of both of these genes being bad, right? Meaning they're
Right.
very slow, right? Are you 100% Italian?
No, I'm not, but
Okay, all right. Well, you're lucky because I'm half, and so I've got half the
yeah,
problem.
I'm about half, and then my wife's a good half, and so my kids are a lot more.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So this gene, this set of genes, one of their main purposes is not only manage the entire methylation cycle, but they help take folate, right? Not folic acid. Folic acid is poison. Everyone, if you want, get that out of your diet as much as you can. Folate sits on the folate receptor and then converts into an enzyme that limits the amount of histamine your mast cells will give off, right? So if you're Italian, you don't have enough of the capability to make these enzymes. So your histamine jumps a little bit extra. A double polymorphism is often misdiagnosed as bipolarism, right? So if you want to know how that impacts that, so it's the histamine, basically problem that you're dealing with. And histamine will create more inflammation, right? Which then causes more chronic pain. So for a guy like you, I would say, make sure your spaghetti's from Italy, right? Make sure your bread is not from the store. It's the artisan bread that they make
Mm,
without the folic acid. If you're going to eat pizza, then all right, I'm going to put myself near the upper limit of folic acid. So I got to make sure I will manage my bread intake or my manufactured food intake going forward because folic acid is everywhere. But the problem with that folic acid is even if you eat a salad or eat some liver that has high amounts of folate in it, if folic acid is already sitting on this folate receptor, it can't utilize it, right? So it
mm,
blocks it from being able to do that. So genetically, when we look at things, you either have a polymorphism or a mutation. A mutation is when it goes completely wrong. These are rare, right? And you're going to know that you have it. It's almost a visual or just something really bad happens. But most of us just have polymorphisms, meaning that parents gave us either a perfectly working gene or a slow working gene, and the other person did that as well. So basically, knowing your genetics will allow you to supplement at a higher amount for that specific gene. So for MTHFR, that gene, that you would want riboflavin to support that gene, which is a B vitamin. Both of my vitamin D receptors are bad. So I'm only utilizing about 30% of the vitamin D that's in my body. So I get the seasonal affective disorder, that depression in the winter. So I know that I need to supplement much greater with vitamin D to get these genes to work a little bit better. You know, most doctors blame your genetics before they've even done a genetic test. They say, oh, did
mm,
your mom have it? They go, oh, your mom had it. Well, then it's genetic. Well, are you cooking the same way your mom was cooking? Are you using the same foods your mom was cooking, right? A lot of us do that. We've grown up eating certain ways, reaching for certain oils, TV dinners, whatever it was,
mhm.
we tend to kind of mimic that. And then not only that, but whatever's left in our food supply is garbage anyway. So it's like, looking at our food is the most important thing. And most people don't want to do that because it takes accountability to do that.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to think they're doing this to themselves.
I wanna go back to one part, and one is this is just me wanting to also make sure I'm correct. So you have folate, which is natural,
Yeah.
and folic acid, which is the artificial of
Yeah.
trying to mimic folate,
Correct.
right? Now,
Yeah.
and you said if folic acid is sitting on my cell where
Folate
folate should
receptor.
be,
Yeah.
then folate just bounces off and doesn't really
It
connect,
can't
right?
attach. Right.
How do I get
Yeah.
rid of that folate? Because if I just start dosing a whole bunch of natural folate, but I've had all this folic acid, how do I get rid of that
Yeah.
to stick
I,
properly?
it takes a couple weeks for it to come out of your system. So it's
Okay.
basically just not adding
So it
more of
naturally
it, or
does come out.
it's going to come out. But here's the interesting thing. It takes a little while for it to come out. So once again, we're saying it creates anxiety, right? So let's say we send our kid to school in the morning with a Flintstone chewable. It's a third of the way of the upper limit, not the safe limit, the upper limit of what a child should have for folic acid. Well, we gave them a bowl of cereal and maybe a muffin or whatever, and then they go to school and have a slice of pizza, whatever else that they might have for snack. They come home, have
Mhm.
another snack that's got folic acid in it. Now they're at the upper limit and they haven't even eaten dinner. Bowl of spaghetti, they're way over. Folic acid in high doses acts, it's not a neurotoxin, but it acts as a neurotoxin would. So
Mm.
now you've got a child who's got all this folic acid in there that's not regulating histamine. He's got anxiety and he's going to school and they're telling you he's got ADHD. Well, the other thing is, and this is just not just for the kids, but for all of us, the LED lights that we're now exposed to all the time are constantly flickering that our eye can't see it, but our brain picks it up and
Mhm.
creates more of an anxious state of mind. So now for us parents who are, we don't want our kid on Adderall or Ritalin. Well, we need to stop giving them so much folic acid in their day-to-day diets and see how much their mood can calm down.
Yeah.
I do that with my kids. I try to teach my kid breathing techniques and things like that. Yeah, I don't want them to be in the same trap that I fell into with having no idea what health and wellness was and just taking all my cues from school and Netflix. Yeah,
Yeah, because it it's not easy otherwise, because the whole our food system, where we get it from, how convenient certain foods are, and all of that. And so I think that there's a level where it's, when somebody turns around and says, "You know what? Doing this is hard," because it's like, "What do I gotta do?" And and we're conditioned to want everything that comes in a bag or a box and out of the
yeah,
freezer and all of that,
yeah.
which we know has all of this stuff in it, but dang it, it tastes good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a ice cream addiction for the longest time. I mean, I'd leave at midnight and go to 7-Eleven and go get a quart of ice cream and just house the thing. And then I would realize like the next day I got this weird feeling in my head. And, I just
Mhm.
so eventually, I don't say I gave up ice cream, but I look at it much differently now. It's like the girlfriend that's been cheating on you, right? Like you're going to keep going back a few times, and you're going to get burnt again and again. And that's been this whole process for me, especially with like folic acid and energy drinks was another thing. It's like I knew it and I knew it and I knew it. And then you do a fast and then you'd put one of those things in your body and then you'd feel terrible. And you're like, okay, I'm breaking up with you, ice cream, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
took another deal, so
Yeah.
man, so, that's some of the stuff that I think a lot of guys just kinda deal with is just, a lot of it has become difficult, where it's so many different things. It's so many, we know all of this is bad, everything's bad, and then we just fall into the mentality, "Well, I'm gonna die at some point, so whatever," kinda deal, and they just roll with it, and it's like, but we gotta remember that, there's so much more than just our food, like, we gotta be around for our kids. We have responsibilities in our life. We also, who we are, we do lead others. We lead others by example, and all of those things. And that's where it's like, it takes some responsibility on our end to
Yeah.
take responsibility for all those things. And it's something that we a lot of times don't want to do. And it takes something serious to shake us up. And you went through that. You went through some, very serious things that were jeopardizing your quality of life to, a deep way. And so you develop these supplements from that. Like, let's talk about that. What's in this supplement that you've got specifically? And then how does all of that work? There it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does all this work? How much do you take? And
Yeah.
can I take this while just sitting on the couch and doing nothing? Or is it a system with, hey, I got to get up and move. I got to get up and do things, talk to us about it.
Yeah. So keep in mind the concept on how you want to approach these things is that you can break these pain makers or offenders down in two different ways: chemically, which is an energy interaction,
Mhm.
or mechanically. Mechanically, meaning like through movement, acupuncture, a massage, something like that. When you do take the supplement, the purpose of the compounds or what the compounds do in studies is start weakening these chemical bonds. So now those other things that you're doing become more impactful. I have a lady, she's she was a professional jockey. She fell off her horse in really bad shape. She's now on her second bottle of flexibility fuel. And I talked to her about it the other day and, how's it going? She's, oh, I really like it. And then I'm like waiting for like the big moment. Oh, I'm getting all this cracking and clicking and all this kind of stuff. And she's not saying it because that's what I expect to hear from most people. And that's what I get from most people. But then we
Yeah.
finally got to, the one thing that is really helpful is my chiropractor is now becoming a lot more useful because the chiropractor is now able to break through these things. Because if you think about what these things are, a fibrin is like a plastic water bottle. You hear it crack, it does not break. It bends with your body. The collagen bonds, what holds them together, are 7 times stronger than steel. So the chiropractor on his own can't get through this stuff. He needs something that's going to kind of cleave those chemical bonds. So let's talk about the supplement. At its base, it's an essential amino acid supplement. And so I have what's called the world's perfect diet, and it's got all the essential things you need. Outside of those essentials, your body will make the other stuff it needs from the essentials. So your essential amino acids is one of the 9 of the 90 that you need. So you've got something that's essential that you can take on a daily basis that's in there. But then what's on top of that is, hyaluronic acid is the first thing that we'll talk about. That holds on to 8,000 times its weight in water. So now your hydration potential is increased so much, and your collagen fibers need water, need to be hydrated so they move smoothly against each other. Then there's pineapple powder. So pineapple powder contains bromelain, which is used as a commercial meat tenderizer. It's a proteolytic enzyme. So that enzyme has been shown in studies to denature the fibrin, the scar tissue, the fibrosis, right? What's left, the clot, right? What's left after the inflammation cycle. Bee propolis has been shown in studies, that's BEE propolis, has been shown in studies to help resynthesize collagen. And what resynthesizing collagen means is breaking down the bad collagen. Your body will then uptake what it can reuse and then get rid of the junk that it can't use through your lymphatic system, your interstitial fluid. It's also an antiviral, to be propolis, antifungal, and it's been shown to be an anti-cancer. I'm not making claims with any of this. This is just what it shows in studies.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's benphotiamine, which helps create a better protein coating around the nerve endings so it can mute that response. There's a thing called PEA. So when your inflammation cycle starts, remember I told you it goes crazy? PEA modulates the cytokine response in the inflammation response so it doesn't go haywire. There's rutin in there, which helps with that glycation, which helps with the swine. Malic acid, which helps break down the oxalates, right? Which you get from this juicing spinach and beet powder and things like that. And I think that's it. But that's all we're going to talk about right now. There might be more in there. But if people want to study what these ingredients are and don't want to buy my supplement, I'm totally fine with that. On my website is a listing of each ingredient. You can go in and ask ChatGPT, how will this particular supplement help with chronic pain? And just start going down rabbit holes and educating yourself. And then you can go on Amazon and buy almost all the ingredients in here, without having to buy the supplements. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Uh,
what's in the supplement. Yeah, sorry.
and we're going to have your website and everything in the description and all of that.
Great.
All the viewers and everybody can grab that up along with like your website where you can get your supplements and all that kind of stuff. But then
Yeah.
what is the dosage? What are we talking about? Taking it and then in addition to?
Yeah. So it's a piece of the puzzle, right? There's no such thing
Right.
as a magic pill for chronic pain. And anyone that's going to tell you that this is what causes chronic pain or there's so much that causes chronic pain and so many conditions that can happen and so many ways that someone can decide to treat it. So taking the supplement's going to help break down the chemical bonds. Now, things like sauna, right? The fibrin will denature at 120 degrees. So when you go in the sauna, not only are you getting that mechanical heat reaction, also the chemical reaction, but the heat also makes the proteolytic enzymes more efficient. Something that's also free that's really important is we talk about breathing through the nose, but do that with your feet firmly planted on the ground, grounding, right? Because when you ground, you're getting all those electrons, all those stabilized electrons up in the body, and they're adding a pair to the free radical, but also they surround all of your blood cells and makes your blood move much more with more viscosity. Acupuncture, people, oh, I've tried acupuncture, but acupuncture has to be utilized the right way by doing dry needling. Dry needling is taking a needle and you're basically kind of fishing around in there trying to find these proteins to break up. But yeah, I mean, it's stretching, foam rolling, massage chair, anything in conjunction that you can do to create movement, but you don't want to create damage, right? You're just kind of helping the body break these proteins down a little bit more. I could, if you want, I can read to you what the Navy SEAL said. Do you want me to do that when he
Yeah, no,
tested my?
I
Okay.
think that that's big where, yeah, it's like, hey, we can read all the studies all day, but like somebody's actual story of using this, and you said like a Navy SEAL has been using that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and read that.
Okay. So in terms of expectations for the supplement, so most people, it takes a couple days for them to feel something, right? And it's usually they hear a little click, a little loosening of a muscle. Some people it's day one. Some people it takes a couple weeks. Some people don't realize that things have come apart until I say, "Hey, how's your shoulder?" Like, "Oh, I didn't even realize." But here's Robert, who is a former Navy SEAL. He's got cancer. He actually makes these honor boxes part-time, which is really interesting as well as like gifts for other soldiers. So this is what he said. I took it last night before bed. I slept like a rock for the first time in years. My pain level is not as severe as before. I have more energy during the day after taking it in the morning. My joints aren't as sore throughout the day. My intestinal issues are not as bad, if you know what I mean. That's the enzymes helping him,
Hmm.
kind of clean up that gut health there. My cancer meds are not draining me physically throughout the day. You have something here. You're right about the taste. That was an early version. It was bad taste. You're right about the taste, but in your new line, I would love to continue to be able to sample it. You have something amazing with this product. Please send me your website. I'll pass it on to my other brothers that suffer the same issue as me to try out. And I'll give you one other example. There's a guy that I work with in my other business and we refer each other business back and forth. He's been going through surgeries the last 11 years and has been on opioids for the last 11 years. He sent me a text message, said, "Dan, this is my fourth day without opioids. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you so much." And then I called him the next day. Once again, I'm not promoting this. This is anecdotal, but he quit his opioids cold turkey. The only side effect he had was a little trouble going to sleep. And I said, "Well, how's the pain level?" He says, "The pain level is the same as with taking the opioid, but without all the side effects."
Hmm.
So, there's, once again, an anecdotal, I don't expect it to treat people who are on opioids to, as some way to come off of it. But, this particular guy had some success with that in that way.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys. I was not specifically in the special operations community, but I know a lot of guys that were friends with a lot of Navy SEALs, friends with my brother was special forces and all that kind of stuff. And I know that they were given a lot of guys were given opioids and all these kinds of things to wean off, and a lot of them unfortunately had to deal with trying to come off of that, and some were unfortunately unsuccessful, and which has really been a devastating part of that community, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's some evidence that an herb called kratom, Kratom, has been
Hmm.
useful in helping people wean off of that. Now, personally, I've tried that just for like some focus. I do find that if I take it for a couple days in a row, it kind of, at least at the time, it exacerbated my anxiety and anger.
Mm.
I'm curious now that I've got most of those problems gone, if I would have the same response to it.
Yeah, I don't know. You come back and tell me
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I
Kinda
need to take it anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and but what about like actual the exercise and movements and all of this kind of stuff? Because that's part of also a big deal with you. I mean, we don't take this stuff and then just feel great, but you're track and field champion, right?
Yeah.
You've gone back and done tremendous stuff athletically, and that takes movement, right? And so where does exercise, stretching, all of that like really play into all of this?
Yeah. So in terms of movement, 90% of what I do is stretching, like
Mhm.
movement that is related to some type of stretching. I utilize the equipment in the gym to help me twist and kind of get past pieces that I can't get past on my own. But the problem with chronic pain is that, once you move, it's going to create that activation of the pain receptor, and then you're going to have
Mhm.
pain there for a while. So it gets really hard to move. And so the exercises that I find to be the best, like actual exercises that aren't just like stretching and in slow movement is an exercise called Tabata. And I do it on a spinning bike. So I don't have
Mm.
much force on the ground. And it's a Japanese scientist or doctor came up with it. Supposedly it's the fastest way to burn fat, where you're just doing 20 seconds of fast exercise with a 10-second rest in between. 20, and you do that 8 times, right? And then that's it. It's like a 4-minute exercise. It's really, really beneficial. Sometimes I'll do 3 sets of them. Sometimes I'll do 9 sets of them if I'm getting kind of closer to a track meet. But this is a little secret that I haven't told many people because I haven't had this conversation. I don't actually train for my track meets like a sprinter would yet.
Mm.
Because even if you have one piece of pain, like I still have a little hamstring issue I'm dealing with, it's still pain. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's not just because it's widespread doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. So I think within the next 3 to 6 weeks, I'm going to have this pain in my leg gone. And then literally all of my lower body pain will be gone in terms of how it inhibits me from being able to train. But I think it's really important to Tabata, pool workouts, foam rolling, slowly moving, deep nasal breathing, which mimics exercise breathing. Ask your body for a little bit more, but don't do more damage, is the philosophy.
Mhm.
Because once you feel good, you're like, oh, I feel great today. And then you go and overdo it. And then you find that you're going to be in bed for the next week and a half, not in bed, but just having a really tough time getting around for the next couple weeks. And then always with that pain flare comes the depression, right? And then
Mhm.
it's like you don't want to do anything and it becomes really hard. So that's why I think it's important to stay very like light exercises, not overdoing it, exploring your limits because only you are going to be able to figure out where those are, and then just kind of staying around them because the last thing you want to do is create more damage. You're not going to get away from creating a little bit more damage though, because when you're pulling these proteins apart from your muscles, a little bit, you're going to have a little inflammation, a little soreness. But the good thing is if you're sticking to the diet and maybe using the supplement or supplements that are in my supplement, you're managing that along the way, right? So
Mhm.
it's going to be way, way less impactful.
This kind of just hit me was a little bit of, when talking about pain, everyone looks at pain differently. And you'd come from like a level of chronic pain and having this, in that form. But this is not going to take away pain of if you actually injure yourself for real, right? Like break your leg, pull a hamstring, like this isn't taking that pain away. This is chronic
What
inflammation type.
Well, so pulling a hamstring, so if you break a leg, it's not gonna help break leg. I mean, what it
Right.
will help is, when you break that leg, you're gonna have scar tissue formation,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's gonna help modulate that scar tissue
Mhm.
formation. But what I think most soft tissue injury, like torn hamstrings and things like that is you've had a little bit of inflammation, a little glycation, a little glue there is sticking these muscles together. And now you've stretched it so hard from doing so, Thanksgiving football game, and we're 40 years
Mhm.
old. We haven't done anything. And we've had this little twinge. And then all of a sudden we actually create more damage because it's binding all those muscles together. Now you've torn an even greater piece of muscle, right? So
Mm.
those acute injuries are going to be from moving too quickly. And that's what you want to stay away from, right? Is just moving too quickly. I wouldn't suggest anybody, if they start feeling good, don't go out and sprint, right? Just stay
Mhm.
on that spinning bike, get in the pool, do Tai Chi, Qigong, all that kind of movement type stuff just to really keep blood flow moving because blood flow is one of the most important pieces because when your blood's flowing, you're delivering these compounds to those areas that you're not typically reaching when you're not moving. Because as we're sitting here, we're only breathing deeply enough to activate the muscles we're using, right? So you have to be intentional when you're breathing deeply because we sit around for so much to encourage.
I was actually having a discussion about our everyday activity in comparison as Americans compared to like Europeans. And like when part of my time in the military, I lived in Germany and traveled around a lot, weekends and all that kind of good stuff. And people walk, people ride bikes, people, in Europe. And then we see that kind of culture still happening a lot in Asia and everywhere else too. And then in the United States, one of the things that we rank best in is fat per capita of people, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's like America. Like, we're fat, and
Yeah.
it's
I
because
mean,
we love comfort. And I think that's why I want to talk about like, hey, your system is not going to take away every bit of pain you deal with. Your system's going to help manage pain. Your system, like, as in, like I said, if you break your
Yeah.
leg, you're still going to experience pain. Like, and
Yes.
Americans want to deal with this. I never feel pain ever. We have this
Right.
mentality of never want to feel pain, and pain's good because
Yeah.
it lets you know something's wrong, but we don't manage it well and we
Yeah.
don't
I
heal
mean,
it well.
so the acute pain and the chronic pain are two different things. And so you
Right.
could, like, say, have a car accident and break your leg, and then you're going to have inflammation all throughout your body.
Of course.
This is
And you should.
designed to help the body get rid of that inflammation. So when you say it's not getting rid of pain, I have to be very careful how I say this because I don't want to get in
Right,
trouble with
right.
the FDA.
Because you break it, you're gonna feel pain.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way to get away from that. It's not masking the
Right.
symptoms of pain at all. What it's designed to do is find this thing that's rubbing against the pain receptor to break it apart so it demineralizes, so it just falls away. And
Mhm.
then in theory, that pain is not going to be there anymore because it's not activating that pain receptor.
Right, right.
So my goal is to have absolutely zero pain in my body. Like, I mean, in any inch, and no sticky muscle, no clicking jaw, no nothing. Because when you look at what the body is, I mean, it's a skeleton, right? It's hanging like a Venetian blind. None of this stuff is fitting into place. The reason our joints hurt is because the fascia around it can move a joint slightly out of place because it's not hanging. When you take all the muscle and fascia away, your skeleton's going to fall right back into alignment, right?
Mm.
So the goal is to find all the sticky tissue to break all that stuff down. And then you have complete freedom of movement, complete flexibility. And I mean, I'm getting there every day. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that something new hasn't become more flexible or loosened up.
Yeah, and that's the goal of healthy living, of being able to do all of that and get to
Yeah.
that point of proper movement, pain-free movement, which I think, yeah, that's what we wanna go after is, and you gotta be healthy to do that. You gotta eat properly to do that, like you were saying. You gotta treat it at the cellular level, which I think is ingenious because a lot of people just wanna go at the symptom and not the root cause, and going to the cellular level, of course, is that root cause, like you were saying.
Yeah. The cellular level is the root response. The root
Mhm.
cause can be anything, right? It can be
Right,
your
right.
food, it can be a car accident, it can be medications that you're on. There's a lot of inflammatory medications that are out there.
Mhm.
It could be from the water you're drinking. You're drinking like acidic water, and that your cells aren't going to respond well to that. So the root cause is something each individual is going to have to dig down at. But I can tell you how whatever you're putting in your body, what response that's causing in the body that's causing stiffness and chronic pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think here's the other question. What is the difference between all of this and then how does this affect when, guys like lifting in the gym and I feel sore. I have a little bit of soreness. I've stretched that muscle. I've kind of even tore the muscle a little bit, not in a negative way, but that's how we grow muscle is tear and rebuild, right? At least that's what has been trained for me
Yeah.
to understand.
So I
Go into
think,
go into that soreness
yeah,
versus,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
chronic pain, kind of thing.
So I think that guy's gonna have chronic pain later. It's just a matter of time because he is creating that little bits of inflammation. Is he fasting to break down the fibrin that's going to be left behind? And more importantly, how is that human building their collagen?
Mm,
Right? It's the most abundant protein in the body. If they're not, if you're going to be doing this and all your collagen fibers are kind of grabbing against one another, well, most of your pain receptors are in your fascia, which is mainly made up of collagen. So as you're doing this and all those pain receptors or those collagen fibers are just kind of grinding against one another, it's going to cause pain. Right.
mhm.
And so I just think most people, if they're not in chronic pain yet, because it's like 30 to 50% of Americans are dealing with chronic pain and juvenile arthritis and things are on the rise. I just think for most people, it's just a matter of time. The little bit of stiffness that you're feeling now, unless you're super intentional about getting rid of it, right? And it's just going to exacerbate over time. And
Right, right.
the only way you can get rid of it is if you know who the enemy is. And, the enemy of these pain makers that I've figured out. And if you're intentional on that, I mean, I'm not saying you're going to heal everything, but your outcomes are going to be way better. Like most people just want to be able to take the garbage out without feeling all this anxiety because their back is on fire and their shoulders are starting to fail and they're dropping everything out of the garbage can. They're getting frustrated. They just want to be able to do that, right? Or just stop and turn around without negotiating that movement, because you know that when you stop, all the muscles in your body are going to tensen up against all these hard proteins. It's going to feel like grabbing onto Velcro, right? And you're just like, and you just become lazy to a degree. Most people just want to operate in their normal day to day, but I knew that I had to take it to such a level and become a world ranked master sprinter, all American sprinter, to let people know what's possible.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. And I'm really Uh, I really want to try your supplements. I really do. I want
Great. Yeah.
because I do like I'll tell you I do deal with like chronic pain here and there. As a veteran, airborne, all of that kind of stuff. Ranger, 90 pounds on my back, and compressed spine. I probably should have been, at least 5'11". I'm 5'9" and a half.
Yeah. Right.
Five
Well,
nine and
that's
a
it.
half. I'm
That,
keeping my
yeah.
half. Right.
That
Kind of thing.
yeah, because with chronic pain, because where you look at where all your fascia is, if you look at the body, right, it's way down the spine, and then in the hips, there's a ton of it, in the
Mm-hmm.
shoulders, in the back of the neck. And what that's doing is slowly making us go like that. So it is shortening us. And when that collagen sets, it pulls 200%. So it's compressing that spine down because it's ratcheting it all down. So when you start resynthesizing it and freeing it up, and and your neck sits back, right? Instead of, being
Mm-hmm.
pushed forward all the time. And, you know, your posture is better, and, everything starts working better. You're getting taller at the same time. And one of the greatest things that I tell people, like, the way they can visualize is when I walk, my legs just go. I used to have to take a step with every step, but now it's almost like I'm on roller skates, the way that my legs are moving forward now. So, like I said, most people just want some relief. And I think what everybody wants is hope. And
Yeah.
I know that when you start implementing some of these things or try flexibility fuel, the very least it's going to do is give you hope, because it works.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
then it's a compounding part, right? It's you gotta take this, but you gotta drink more water, and then you gotta start doing movement exercises and all these
Yeah.
kinds of things, and there is no, "I can sit on the couch, magic pill," for all this,
No.
and so
I mean, this will work while you're sitting on the couch, to be honest with you, as long as there's not food in your stomach, because it's going into your bloodstream and looking
Mhm.
for this stuff right away. So it can work. It's just not going to be effective. It's just what you put into it is what you're going to get back out of it. But for you personally, like, I would love to know, like, if you like figured out like where all your chronic pain points are and kind of diagram them. What you'll find is, like, when you exercise, the places that fatigue the quickest are more than likely where the chronic pain is going to be setting in. Also, whatever your diet is, if you ever want to like send me like a week of like what you've eaten for that week, I'll go through it and be like, all right, this is what's causing some of these pain problems, and these are some of
Mhm.
the things that you might want to substitute for these types of foods. But I'd love to work with you, for free, and like get you to a point where you're like, okay, this is exactly what he said it was.
Yeah, yeah, no, because 'cause I'd love to have you back on, and definitely if I'm going through the program a little bit and all that kinda good stuff, be able to, like, "No, this is no joke.
Yeah.
This is great," kinda stuff. Absolutely. Dan, I really appreciate you being on here, man. Absolute wealth of knowledge. I think on top of it, it's awesome to be able to talk with you, and get to
Thank
know
you.
your story a lot more, and so thank you very much for being on. I think the last question I have for you is, guys, even ladies, you finished watching this podcast. What do they start doing on top of going to the website and getting your supplement, right? What is the next step or the step in addition to that they can start doing
All right.
today to
Let
help
me
them out?
remove folic acid,
Mhm.
increase your omega 3s, reduce the omega 6s, breathe through your nose, and ground, right?
Mhm.
Let's do those 5 things to start and see how much things start turning around. But I really would encourage people to try the supplement, right? And it's like, I know, like, for the majority of people, they're going to get a really good response from it. I have a discount code for your guy, for anybody's listening, is Flex. If they use Flex for a discount code, they can get on there. The program
Outstanding.
itself it's a bunch of, and I'm redoing it to make it a much simpler, more visuals for $13.69 a month. You can have access to it. You can get through it in a week. Like you don't, right? So for and it's $196 if you just buy it and you get a free bottle of flexibility fuel. But if you're just kicking the tires and you're like, I want to see what this guy's talking about. Let me see if any of this resonates with me. For $13, you can go through it, literally screenshot everything. I don't care. I just want people to heal, and then utilize it, and, start implementing some of these things and see if it works for you. But yeah, I hope I hear from people that have listened to this and they get good results, because it just keeps me motivated to reach more people.
No, amazing, dude. And we've talked even before this, and I can absolutely hear your heart in the whole thing, and really honestly wanting to help people, which is knowing the genuineness behind that is no gimmick, right?
Yeah.
It's no gimmick. And so,
Thank
guys,
you.
ladies as well, make sure to check out Dan's stuff on here. That'll be in the description and everything. Again, like he said, the code word flex to get a discount in there as well. And then, dude, $13 for a trial. That's a no-brainer. And that's a no-brainer right there.
Yeah.
So
it fills a huge missing piece in education on chronic pain. At the very, very least, you're going to be much greater educated on like why this chronic pain epidemic is happening.
yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for being on with us today. I know we're definitely going to have you back on. You're in the Philly area, so we'll probably even have you as an in-person guest at some point as well. But all of you out there, thank you very much for being a part of this today. Hey, it's Valor and Vision for a reason. And that's to valor as in having the courage to go forth and face the adversities that we have in life, to go after the vision that we have. And if it's pain, get a hold of Dan. All right. Take care. God bless everyone. Have a good one. See you next time.